Hi, this is Gurasi Singh, and you're listening to my Thick Accent podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I want to discuss a few housekeeping items. First, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please consider doing it. Podcast production is not easy, it requires a lot of time and effort, and we can continue only and only with your support. And second, if you would like to share your immigrant story or know somebody I should invite next to the podcast, please reach out to us at hello@mythickaccent.com, or you can also DM us on Instagram. The handle is mythickaccent. Now let's get to the episode. So let me tell you a little bit about India today. So there are 23 official languages in India, and English is one of them. And around 10% of the Indian population speaks English, which would translate to approximately 125 million people, which is almost 3 times the total Canadian population. So I am one of those 125 million who was taught English, studied in English, and even worked in the same. I thought I had a good command over the widely spoken language until I moved to Canada and realized there is a difference between Indian English and Canadian English. And honestly, the major difference is the pronunciation. I can say I came with an understanding of the language, a lot of hope, and an open mind, just like my guest today. He moved to Canada 17 years ago from Colombia. Considering his trajectory of experiences from being an English as a second language teacher in Colombia to being a career counselor for the city of Toronto to being a professor at ILAC International College and now a professor teaching digital skills for life and work at George Brown College, he definitely understands the pains and needs of immigrants and started his own venture 6 years ago called Orbit 5 that aims to disrupt and change the negative language that is used around all things career. He's also a multilingual nerd and can speak 6 languages, including French, German, Italian, and Portuguese. Fascinating, right? So let's learn more from him how he's able to retain all the above in his mind and how he can help you in your daily job search grind. Please welcome David Mendoza.
Thank you so much, Gurasis, for having me as a guest speaker on your podcast. It is my honor and my pleasure to having this conversation with you. And you've just shared something very interesting that I was not aware of. It's interesting how we love making assumptions in
Mm-hmm.
life. And because my business partner is from India and
Yeah.
I interact a lot with Indian folks, I had the assumption that there was a larger number of Indian folks who spoke English back home. And you're telling me it's 125 million. I'm not going to say only because that's a massive number,
Yeah.
but I was thinking it was about the billion people who spoke the language, right? So it's great because when we have these conversations, we learn. And I feel that's why this podcast is so special and so interesting, because I feel that the listener can enrich their knowledge and get new perspectives and new lenses from the people who interact with you. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Absolutely. It's great to have you on the podcast. And let me share with you something also. I also didn't know that the majority of the Indian population does not speak Hindi, which is our sort of like the national language. I thought it's the national language.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it's not, because I met few people from the South here in Canada. I never got the opportunity to
Mhm.
travel to South much. And I met few
Mhm.
people here who are from South India, and they have never even studied Hindi, which was really fascinating to
Mhm.
me. So that's the benefit
Yes,
and the advantage of living in Canada, where you meet people from all around the world. And in fact, even from my same
absolutely.
country. Amazing.
Yes, actually, I have a friend from Gujarat as well who is helping us with a couple of things at Orbit 5. And coincidentally, he mentioned that yesterday about the south part of India. And he
Yeah.
said in that region, people do not speak Hindi. They don't know how to speak the language. They speak
Yeah.
English as their first language. And I'm like, really? How interesting.
Yes,
So I
it
think
is.
we and I are connected to some extent this week in that regard.
Yeah, but David, six languages. Huh? I mean, I remember this quote you
Mm.
shared once on your LinkedIn, which
Yeah.
was that if you can't buy happiness, but you can learn languages, and that's kind of the same thing. Is that so?
100%. I'm really a language person. I love languages. When I was in school back home, I was 6 years old when I got first introduced to English.
Mhm.
And immediately something clicked. And I remember I went home and I told my mom, Mom, there's this class English and it's new and it's a different thing and I don't understand, but I think I'm pretty good at it. So
Mhm.
immediately it was a love at first sight with English, and I grew an interest in languages. But I just focused on English when I was growing up. When I came to Canada in 2006, 17 years ago, I only spoke English and Spanish, but Spanish is my first language. And then in 2015, I had a chance to go to Brazil. I went there a couple of times and I fell in love with the culture and I fell in love with the language. I found it is a very melodic and happy language. And because I speak Spanish, I could understand maybe 70% of what they said there without speaking any Portuguese. So
Okay.
that's the first one that I took. I came here and I started studying it and I'm fluent in the language. And then because I was part of the staff members at George Brown, and now as faculty, we do
Yeah.
get really good deals when it comes to continuing education. So I thought, you know
Mm.
what, maybe I should capitalize on this and increase my cultural awareness by learning languages so I can put myself better in the shoes of the communities that I serve. So I then started getting my wet feet in German. I had studying German back in Colombia. I did two levels and I really liked it, although I found it very complex and very different from the Romance languages. And then I took Italian and French. So right now I am fluent in English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
Mhm.
I'm getting there in Italian. I had the chance to go to Italy last year, and I navigated myself pretty well. So that's the one that I'm capitalizing more on. And I am pretty good with French and German. I can go there and I can go and navigate myself with basic conversations and whatnot. So truly, it gives me happiness. For me, it's true wealth when you have the chance to speak languages and when you visit countries where people speak those local languages and they hear you trying to communicate in their language, the entire experience changes. And
Mm.
then they make you feel more welcomed and they love it and they appreciate you. So for me, that's true wealth.
Yeah, like I said in the introduction, it's fascinating. It's amazing to have all these languages in another feather in your cap, so to say. And so, out of all these six, obviously English and Spanish being your natives. So, out of the other four, which one was like the most difficult to learn?
German, for sure, because it's very different. Because English is a Germanic language, right? But English is a universal language. So as I've been mentioning, I got introduced to it when I was 6,
Mhm.
and there was the movies and the music and the cartoons and the comic strips and everything, right? And the books and everything, right? So
Mhm.
we had more access to English.
Mhm.
Whereas the other languages not too much. But when you study French, Portuguese, and Italian as a Spanish speaker, it makes more sense because the grammar structures are very similar. And once you learn another Romance language, so you have two under your belt, then the third one it becomes easier
Mhm.
because you see more similarities, and then you start comparing. Okay, Italian, for example, I find personally that it's a little bit more similar to Portuguese than it is to Spanish, right?
Okay.
And then French, it sounds very different, but the structure is the same, right?
Mhm.
So German is a very different language. So it's a different challenge, but I love it. People have the misconception that German is a tough language, but I find it super cool. I love the way it sounds. It's a big challenge for sure, but it's a language that I enjoy very much. So hopefully down the road I can challenge myself to learn other languages. I took two courses of Mandarin because I was supposed to go to China in 2020 on a teaching assignment, but the offer got rescinded, of course, because of COVID. And then I would love to either at least get familiar with Hindi or with Gujarati because I have a lot of Indian friends because we work with a lot of Indian students, right? So it would be nice to just connect with the culture more closely by speaking one of the language. Or I don't know if it's speaking, right? I don't know if it's going to be possible. Why not? Why not, right? But at
Yeah.
least getting by and just getting the basics in Hindi or Gujarati. I think it would be super nice.
Okay, awesome. I would love to teach you some Punjabi, which is my mother tongue.
There you
I will
go.
teach that as well.
Nice. Fair enough. Punjabi, we can add it to a list as well.
Okay, awesome. So let's just talk about Colombia, your home
Yeah.
country. Tell me a little bit
hmm
about your formative years, the time you spent there, and also what the focus was on growing up.
Right. So Colombia, for the listeners who have been to South America, you know there is a piece of paradise on earth. In my opinion, of course, I'm biased, but I think that is the best country in the world because it's the door to South America,
Mhm.
and South America is the host of the Amazon, the lungs of the earth.
Mm,
So the geography, the animals, the water resources, and everything is beautiful. And Colombia is the door to that. We have the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. So I'm very happy and I feel lucky to have been born in such a beautiful country. I come with a family of five, mom, dad, and two brothers. I'm the eldest. When I was like 9 years old, my dad left, so my parents kind of got separated.
mhm,
That, of course, came with a lot of challenges. I think as a kid and as a teenager, you don't need money, you don't need luxury. What you need is like emotional companionship,
mm,
and those things were lacking in the on my dad's side. Now I have a good relationship with him, but as I
mhm,
adulted, because I started judging my parents for my problems, and I understood that they were young at one point too, and so who am I to judge them? They people
sure.
make mistakes, and I feel that all families are dysfunctional. But one thing that I do remember about my family is that it was a very harmonious environment.
Mhm,
We did simple plans, but we were a very happy family, a tight knit community on our own, and that was great. My parents, they wanted us, me and my two brothers, to be bilingual before we finished high school or university. So they made the effort to send my brothers here to Canada, and I had the chance to go to England as an international student as well.
mhm,
I went to a private Catholic school back home, which, if I could turn back time, I would never do that again because I feel it was too strict and it did not recognize my talents.
mhm,
I liked, as I mentioned, humanities, English, philosophy, Spanish, music, all that stuff. And the students who were into mathematics, physics, were the ones who got rewarded, and I was not into those topics, right?
mm,
So I did not have the best experience or relationship with education per se, but that's what I actually turned into fuel when I started teaching English back home after I graduated from my business program, because I saw that I had the power of connecting with students who wanted to develop a skill and use that potential to better themselves and in an area of their lives. And I saw that I had
mhm,
the ability to help them with that. So I decided to turn the negative experiences that I had in my own education journey into providing my students with memorable learning and life experiences. And that's how I've been living my life for the past 20 years
mhm.
since I started working professionally.
Yeah, you said one thing very true that maybe like 2 decades ago, these professions, maybe somewhere in arts or humanities, wasn't that well appreciated compared to today, where
hmm
there are so much to choose from. So that's definitely
Yeah.
the benefit that the newer generation have today. Tell me another thing, David. Is there something that people don't know about Colombia? Tell us about that.
Colombia, it's, well, maybe people know this. Colombia is considered to the country with the best coffee in the world, which, as I believe that people know in India, people are very, I've got big fans of tea,
Yeah.
maybe more than coffee, right? But
Hmm.
then I see here, like in when they try coffee, they kind of like, become coffee lovers as well. So that's one thing that maybe people don't know about it. Other thing that I feel that people don't know about Colombia now, to make it a little bit more contemporary, is that Spanish language, it's kind of become very popular in the past 5-10 years.
Hmm.
And if you see in terms of artists, most
Hmm.
of the big names of artists in the world, Latino origin, are from Colombia. So we have Shakira, of course, our queen.
Hmm.
We have J Balvin. We have Maluma. We have Carol G. Four names in within the arts and the music industry that are like dominating the charts right now. So maybe that's something that people don't know about Colombia. We have a lot of artists that are that are dominating the charts nowadays.
Okay, perfect. So then you plan to move to UK as an international student. Tell us, okay,
Hmm.
first of all, tell me,
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
was your first day in UK when you landed? It was the very first time. I'm assuming for the first time you were moving away from your home country. So how what was going on in your
Yep.
mind? How was it like?
Yes. So the original plan was to go to Seattle because I always wanted to go to Seattle because when I was a teenager, I really liked grunge music, right? Nirvana, Soundgarden,
Hmm.
Pearl Jam, all these bands. So I always wanted to go to Seattle because those bands were from there. But then I failed the 10th grade in high school, right? So I had to do it again. So my dad said, you know what, just go to university. And when you are halfway through, then you can go to your exchange to improve your English, right? So that's what I did. I went to university. And then probably after the first year, I started doing the running the errands to find out where I wanted to go to improve my English. And then, of course, my first option was Seattle. But I found in the agency that I was researching that they had a plan to go to Bournemouth in the south coast of England,
Hmm.
and it was the same price than going to Seattle. So I'm like, you know what? The United States is closer to Colombia, and it's more common for us to go there. It's a little bit more difficult to go to England, so why not going to England instead?
Yeah.
And I went there. So it's a city in the south of England called Bournemouth. It's a coastal city. It's actually the most beautiful beaches in the UK. They're considered, and I had the best time of my life there. I remember I got there. It was a January 4th. It was my very first winter. I remember I arrived in London and someone from the school was waiting for me there to pick me up because the drive from London to Bournemouth is about 2 hours. And I remember it was like 4:30 when they picked me up, and I saw that it was already dark. So that kind of struck me, right? It's like, oh my God, why is it so early? Is it so dark? So that was kind of the first thing that I noticed. What they said, it was true. It's gray skies. It's rainy, but I had the
Yeah.
best time of my life there. And I think it's because I stayed with a host family that was super supportive and that was amazing. I
Hmm.
had a really, really, really good experience. Beautiful house. It was close to school, so it was walking distance, and they were super supportive. I'm still in touch with them after so many years, right? So I was lucky on that, and I also loved it because I had a really good experience. It was like David before and after my experience as an international student.
Nice.
I used to be super super shy when I was a kid growing up, and that I never talked. I didn't never wanted to be seen, and I don't know if because I was forced to go to a country on my own and make friends from scratch, and I think because we were all in the same situation that I kind of open up a little bit more, and I really had a good experience. I loved my time in England. I really learned a lot about myself. I learned about how to be independent. I learned about how not to just rely on my parents for any single problem that I had,
Hmm.
but be more resourceful as well. And I learned for the first time about other cultures because I lived all my life in Colombia for the first 18 years of my life, right?
Hmm.
So I was only used to what was in my surroundings. But when I went to this place and that school, it was just international students. I made friends people from all over the world. And it's the first time when I try sushi, for example.
Hmm.
It's the first time when I try other foods. It's the first time when I started hearing other languages that I didn't
Yeah.
know. Well, of course, I knew that German existed and Italian and Japanese, but I never heard them.
Yeah.
So that kind of ticked, and I had a really, really good time. So I think that's why when I returned to Colombia, it was in the back of my head to go back, to go away again, because I really liked the experience living abroad, and especially after when I had a chance to start teaching English as a second language. I thought that I found my mission, I found my calling, my vocation, which is to empower the youth to identify their talents and potentialize them.
Hmm.
So, but everything started with that experience as an international student. There, I have to clarify something. I was not an international student at a college or university taking a
Okay.
program. I was an international student there in the UK improving my English. So I was just focusing on the English language,
Okay.
right? So I did have a part time job, but I was not super focused on what's going to happen about my career, my visa after this, because I knew that I had to go back to Colombia to finish my degree and continue with my life. But still, I had a really life changing experience. And that's why I do the work that I do, because I do want international students to have a similar experience that is life changing and enriching. And that's part of because of my own experience in England.
So what surprised you the most about England?
That people are super friendly, because people say, "Oh, the British are cold. The British are not friendly." They were
Yeah.
super friendly. At
Hmm.
least in the city where I lived in, right? There was a pub that was not far from school, and in the evenings we used to go there, and we made a lot of British friends that were our age at the time and whatnot. So we hung out with them as well. We share beers, we share times. So I found people were super friendly.
Hmm.
Another thing that really surprised me is that I feel that in Colombia we are very laid back, we're relaxed. If sometimes we if somebody invites you to their home at 4 p.m. and it's fine if you arrive at 5 p.m. English people are very punctual, and in my
Yeah.
house, in my host family, they were super punctual. So their dinner was at 5 p.m.
Hmm.
And I remember once, it was like a month after I had arrived, and it was 5 p.m. And then I got home, and then the guy at the house, like, "Where were you? We're waiting for you. Your dinner is served there." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I was just hanging out with my friends." I'm like, "Why didn't you tell us? Dinner is at 5, David, right? So
Hmm.
if you're not coming to dinner, you have to let me know, because dinner is served here at 5 sharp on the dot." And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
these people take things very seriously. And for example, imagine the one day, right, that I went out with my friends or something. We went to a club or something, and then I returned home late, and I didn't want to go to school the next day. I
Yeah.
had to leave a note to the guy on the stairs saying, "I'm not coming for breakfast. Thank you very much." Otherwise, he would come into the room and wake me up for breakfast. It
Wow.
happened, right? So that's something
Interesting.
that really struck me, because they were very, very strict with their schedules. And it worked
Hmm.
for them well, because they were a very successful family. So I think discipline was very important for them, and it was one of the values that they wanted to instill in their kids.
I have a cousin who's in England, and he always tells me that you cannot function
Yeah.
here on Indian Standard Time. And they're very, very punctual about the
Yes,
time.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. They are extremely punctual, and gracias. If you think about it, it's a good habit,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
it's, for example, you've seen this in North America. What we don't have here is time. Yes,
Hmm.
so why would you disrespect the other person by not validating or honoring their time? So I
Yeah.
think that's a beautiful thing that they do. If I tell you 6 p.m., it is 6 p.m., and if not, I will tell you in advance. Let's take
Yeah.
a rain check, but I'm not gonna get late to our appointment. I'm not gonna get there late to work. I'm not gonna get there late for the interview. Right?
Yep.
It's very important to them, and I think it's a really nice thing.
So let's just pivot towards your Canadian journey. 2007, if I'm not wrong,
Hmm.
you moved to Canada.
Yeah, 2006, 2006.
2006. Okay. 2006, you moved to Canada. So how was your first day? Tell about that.
You know what? It's funny, because it's almost 20 years ago, and I remember that day vividly. Right? I knew one person here, a friend of mine,
Mhm.
that I knew from Colombia, right? And she went to the airport, and she picked me up, and she's like, "David, we're gonna take the TTC, because I don't drive here. So we're gonna take the subway. TTC here is Toronto Transportation System. So we're gonna take that to get to my place." And I'm like, "Yeah, perfect, no problem."
Mhm.
So then I remember we went to a TTC, and one thing that I saw, the first thing that I saw is like, "Oh, okay, there's people that look very different from one another.
Mhm.
There's all races here, and people are speaking in different languages. So
Mhm.
there's English, there's Hindi, there's Spanish, there's Chinese, Mandarin, there's other languages too.
Yeah.
This is very interesting, right?" And it was October 6th, I remember. So it was fall, it was not in winter, but I do remember that it was a different kind of cold, because my city back home, Bogota, the capital city, is high up,
Mhm.
is 2,600 meters above sea level. So it's on the cold side, but the cold here, it's different. The cold here like pierces you,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, oh my God, it's not freezing cold, but I do feel this kind of cold that I've never experienced, not even in England when I was in the winter there. So I remember that. And then I remember that we went there to her place, we unpacked, and she said, "Okay, I'm going to go call another friend. She's going to come to us for lunch, and we're going to go walk around downtown and whatnot." And I don't know why, Gracias, but like with English, when I was 6, it was first love at first sight. With Toronto, the first day, it was love at first sight with the city.
Hmm.
It's like I don't know how to explain this, but it's like me telling myself, "You know what, buddy? You found your place in the world. This is your
Love
home."
that.
very first day. And then I remember we hung around downtown, blah blah blah. She showed me a couple of spots, and then we returned home. I took a shower, I changed, and then we went clubbing that night. I remember we went
Wow.
to a club that, and that with her friends and whatnot. So my first day and my journey kind of started on a very high note, if you will.
Awesome. I wish mine would have started the same way. But that's a story for another time.
Okay.
Okay. So you did said, like I told in the introduction, that you said to me earlier in our conversation that you came with a language and an open
Mhm.
mind, but no strategy. Tell us, what did you mean by
Right.
that?
Absolutely. So when I decided to leave Colombia and I arrived in Canada, I came with four things. I'm going to say
Mhm.
I came here with $700 in my pocket. I came here with a language. I came here with an open mind, and I came here with one connection. Those were the four things that I brought with me that day.
Mhm.
But I didn't bring a strategy.
Mhm.
What it means is that I remember my friend told me, she asked me, "What do you want to do, David?" And I told her, "Whatever, anything I'll do. I don't mind. I just need to start something somewhere, right?" And she said, "Okay, in that case, I can hook you up with my roommate because he used to work at a decoration store. So when he gets from work, he had moved to now another work job more related to his field. But she said to me, he's in really good terms with the owner of that store. So why don't we ask him and see if he can ask the owner of that decoration store and if they need people,
Yeah.
right?" Sure, yes, anything, I'm down. And I remember the guy arrived at night after work, and we asked him, and he's like, "Are you busy now?" I'm like, "No." I'm just like, "I'm new here. I'm not doing anything, right?" "Okay, let's go." And I'm like, "Now?" And she's like, "Yeah, let's go." So we went to the decoration store, and the guy was there. And he's, they I remember they greeted him like very warmly and stuff. And he asked him, this guy's new and he's looking for an opportunity. And the guy told him, I will never forget this. The guy told him, "Look, we're not looking for people, but because you brought him here and because we know you and we know that we can trust you, if you want, you can start tomorrow." That's it. No resumes asked, no interviews asked, nothing. Okay, it was a
Interesting.
labor job, right?
Hmm.
But still, right? So at that moment, I'm like, really? Oh my God, tomorrow? This is my third day in Canada. Oh my God. All right. And at that point, I understood that connections were very important, that the best career opportunities happen through networks because I experienced it since the very get go. Having said that, I don't regret that because that job taught me a lot. It taught me humility, and I use it as a platform for other things. And I loved it because it really taught me about service, true
Mhm.
service.
Mhm.
In our countries, there's no customer service. I learned true service there, right? I loved it. I was there for 2 months. But turning back the time, if I could do things again, I would have started building relationships with people in Canada before I arrived here.
Mm.
Have informational interviews, ask people about their journeys, how they got there, what are some things that I could do to be more competent, and start working on those. And be reflective on my journey. What are the things that I wanted to explore and find ways to get there instead of just like anything,
Mhm.
because things are more difficult when you don't have a plan. Look, let me tell you a story. This morning I was at a college where I'm the career counselor,
Mhm.
and usually I do my conversations with them via Zoom, but they wanted me to go to in person to help a larger number of students. And it was from 11 to 1. And when I left, I was leaving, and I saw that the security guard, she was looking at me, and she's like, "Oh, can I ask you something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." "Oh my God, I was waiting for you until you finished because I want to ask you something." And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." So she told me, I want to get advice on how I can get my co-op. And I told her, "Do you go here for school?" And she's like, "No, I go to another college." "What program are you taking?" "Hospitality." I'm like, "Perfect. So tell me about your experience besides this." "Oh yeah, so this security guard, and I also have another job." And I am like, "Perfect. So it's related to hospitality because it's customer service. So you already have something to play with, right?
Mhm.
What do you want to do for your internship, for your co-op?" And she's like, "I don't know, whatever, anything." And
Hmm.
I told her no. I stopped her and I told her no. You cannot say anything or anywhere because you paid $20,000 a year to get education here in Canada.
Hmm.
So you need to be very strategic with the co-op that you choose. And also because if you just rely on the school resources, those co-ops are going to be unpaid. What if you can find a paid opportunity?
Yeah.
And what if that can be turned into a full-time opportunity? You need to be strategic in your co-op choices, because the co-op is the climax of your program, because that's where you're going to acquire real life skills, because at school is different.
Hmm.
At school is different. What you learn there is the basics, but true learning happens at the workplace, right?
Yeah.
So you just cannot say anything, right?
Hmm.
So that kind of like, you know, it got, it resonated with her. And she's like, oh my God, I never thought about this. I'm like, yeah, when do you have to do your co-op? And she's like, in September. And I'm like, perfect. You have a good 4 months, right? It's 5 months to really build your strategy and land yourself a really good co-op, right? So I asked her, okay, send me your resume on a service that we provide where we do resume reviews to help people and whatnot. So I loved it, and I left the place feeling really nice about this conversation, because that's my job, Gurasis, right?
Yeah.
My job is to help people see a perspective and help people see something that they are not seeing. And it
Hmm.
was like kind of like coincidental, because what I was not supposed to talk to that person. She was the security guard, and I was just saying goodbye. But
Yeah.
I loved it because she's like, this guy's helping these students. And when I walked, I heard what he was talking about. So what if I ask him a question
Yeah.
about my own things? What's the worst that can happen? Sorry, I'm busy, right?
Yeah.
Best thing can happen. I stopped, I talked to her, and now she has something to think about. I asked,
Hmm.
do you have LinkedIn? Yes, okay, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then I'm going to help her. We're going to set a conversation with her, because she was so nice.
Hmm.
Really good customer service. And I loved it that she took initiative, and she asked me. She was not scared of that. So
Yeah.
she can use that in her job search. So I will help her. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm saying this because this kind of relates to my own story when I came here.
Yeah.
I was like, anything, anywhere. No, you can't do that. Maybe in 2006 you could, because life was very different 17 years ago. Things were cheaper, and it was not the same competition. Now the city is extremely expensive, and Canada in general, and there is a lot of competition. So you need to equip yourself with a lot of skills and a lot of stories so that you can thrive. So
Yeah.
you cannot come with the things like, I'm fine with anything. No, you're not, because you
Yeah.
pay $20,000 a year. And plus your own expenses in life and stuff is like $30,000, $40,000 a year. And then you're going to conform with anything that is thrown at you. No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's the job that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a plan definitely helps you to navigate your next steps. It might not go exactly as planned, but definitely helps you to kind of
Yes, man.
explore and discover
Yes,
new
yes,
options that
yes,
might
yes.
come your way.
And I think it's nice what you just mentioned, right? You're saying that it might not work the way you plan at first,
Yeah,
but things happen for a reason, and then you're here because maybe you
absolutely.
can
Yeah,
explore other things that you could not explore when you were home. Maybe because societal pressure, or because your parents, or because this. But here you can explore whatever areas you want and play and experiment and see what happens, and maybe find your calling by trying things out, right?
yeah. Another thing I want to touch upon is you mentioned in one of your posts also to leave your prejudices behind. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Yes, absolutely, man. Wow. Okay, so this is for me one of the things that I love talking about the most. People complain about racism here, right, in North America. Oh, it's the white people, they're so racist and stuff. But
Hmm.
when I talk to people from my culture, from India, from Japan, from China, from everywhere, from Brazil,
Hmm.
we are so racist.
Yeah.
We are so racist, and things are so normalized
Hmm.
with our own people, and language that is racist and classist is so normalized, right?
Hmm.
So you don't realize that you have been raised that way, or you're like that, until you come here and you start an entry level job, a survival job that you are never used to do in your life. Because I never had to do any lifting, any labor, any stuff like that back home. And here I'm here with in a warehouse, lifting carpets, doing this is pure labor work, right? So
Hmm.
you're like, oh my God. So on you do customer service jobs, and you're like, and then you're like, wow, I was an asshole, excuse my French. I was an asshole with people in customer service back home. So that teaches you a massive lesson. You know what? You will never treat other people with disrespect, people who are in entry level jobs, because you know what that is. And that is the most beautiful thing that this country gives you when you're a
Yeah.
newcomer or an international student, right? You put yourself in their shoes. I have friends that, they were wealthy back home and stuff, but you're no one here because nobody knows you. You're an
Nobody. Yeah.
invisible at first, right? So you have to have your job at Walmart as a cashier and that, and you're like, wow, oh my god, this is what it feels to be invisible.
Yeah.
And I made feel so many people invisible when I was growing up. So it's a massive lesson that life teaches you. So I think that Canada, what gives you is that it helps you get rid of the prejudices that you grew up with you leave them behind. And again, because we are accustomed to just see media in a way that we deepen stereotypes. Yes, so then, for example, oh, people from these countries are like this, people from that culture are like this. No, they're not. When you take the time to actually make friends and talk to people, you will see that there's more similarities than differences.
It's all like generic view of people. It's generic. It's not exactly how it is. Yeah.
Exactly, you can. So, for example, we as Colombians, we had really bad propaganda worldwide in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, right? Because of our political situation and whatnot, right? And I'm telling you, man, people go to Colombia now and they don't want to come back
Hmm.
because they are like, wow, this country's amazing. And I thought it was the worst thing in the world because of what the media says. So you cannot generalize, you cannot stereotype,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
it's nice. So if you're new to the country and you're listening to this podcast and this conversation, open your mind, open your mind, make friends, talk to people that look very different from you because you will realize how similar they are because we all want the same things in the world, right?
Yep.
We like the same things. We just need to
Mhm.
give ourselves the gift of opening up our minds and getting to know people and other cultures and stuff. It's just beautiful. That's the beauty of Canada, man.
Yeah. And just adding to that, I do know a lot of people who are, dying to move to Canada. And then there are people who get the opportunity but refuses to make the investment you make count. And that's, I have seen you talked about that a lot. And let's just start by, talking about, opportunity to challenge yourself. Talk a little bit about that.
Challenge yourself, exactly. So you're new to the country, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have one person, maybe you have family members, but people don't know you here. So push yourself to try to become a better version of yourself and maybe work on something that you are not that you deemed as an area for improvement when you were home, right? So
Hmm.
look, I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by this. A couple of years ago, I was working for the chef school at one of the colleges here at George Brown, and I was helping in the internship area, right? And I remember one student came to me, but you could see the stress in his face. He was in massive distress, right?
Hmm.
Worried and anxious. David, I'm worried that I will not find an internship. And I'm like, when is your internship? In September. And this is like February, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, what makes you think that you're not going to find an internship? And he's like, because English is not my first language and I have an accent.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay. English is not my first language either and I have an accent too. Do you
Yeah.
understand me? And he said, yes. Okay, I understand you too. So, but communication is the thing that you're identifying as a barrier, right? Yes. Okay, so what are you doing to overcome that barrier? He was quiet.
Hmm.
Are you going to career center to talk to people, to talk about how to prepare for an interview, how to network, how to improve your resume and your reading communication abilities? No. Have you joined a conversation club here in the at the college? No. Where are you from, man? China. Okay,
Hmm.
nice. Whereabouts in China? Guangzhou. Nice. Who do you hang out with? Oh, my Chinese friends are waiting for me here. Look, there they are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, man. So you are giving yourself the answer that you're looking for. You're telling me that you're scared that you're not going to find a job because you don't speak the language properly and because you have an accent. But you're telling me that you're speaking Mandarin all the time here, right?
Mm.
So you're paying all this money to speak your first language.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by challenge yourself. You have this opportunity, this gift. Why do you always hang out why do you need to hang out with Chinese people?
Mhm.
when you have the chance to hang out with Latinos, with Indians, with Koreans, and with Canadians too,
Yeah.
right? So why wouldn't you try to do that? If you challenge that, you have no idea the kind of doors that you can open. But
Hmm.
you have to help. I told him, you need to help us help you.
Yeah.
Because if you stay like this and you identify the problem and you're not doing anything, you're not going to find your internship. But look, you have 6 months to work on this. So
Hmm.
it's up to you, right? And he was like, quiet, right?
Yeah.
Listening, man, right? Because sometimes they need to hear these things.
Yeah. These are facts. This is true. People do come and stay within their own communities.
Yes, man. And look, yes, and I have like thousands of examples, but I think also there's misconceptions about Canada. I don't know what people are told when they get recruited, but I feel that people come here with the idea that the jobs fall off the trees or something, and then they realize, oh my God, like no, this is actually pretty challenging to find a job here. Yes, because you need to understand how to play the game. And if you want to play the game, you need to challenge yourself. You need to reach out to people. You need to communicate. It doesn't matter what's your field. Communication is the most important skill. And it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with accent.
Mhm.
Communication is how you can confidently convey your value on
Mhm.
in a written way, in an oral way, and how you listen,
Yeah.
right? It has nothing to do with accent. Nothing.
100%. Yeah.
As long as you can communicate and people understand your message, you're good. But if
Mhm.
you are, again, if you come here and you're paying $20,000 a year and you're just speaking in Chinese, listen to Mandarin artists and watching Mandarin movies, and you are have zero exposure to the local language, what kind of job are you pretending you're gonna land?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna blame the entire system around you. Oh, that's cool. They didn't give me resources. Oh, people are so not friendly there. No, you didn't try. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that people don't experience, you know, um, maybe bad moments and stuff for sure. I'm not saying that you might not you are not exempted from that, right? But for the most part, is the effort that every person decides to put
Yeah.
to better themselves and to improve and to grow. Because if you come here, it's because you want to grow.
Yeah.
Simple. Whether you staying here in Canada or you go back to your home country, you come here and you make that investment because you're looking to grow. And if you even if you stay in the same box, but you just change your geographic location, where's the growth?
Yeah. It's like coming from China and end up being within the Chinese community. That's not going to help you grow.
Sure. And I've taught classes. Look, I remember when I was a professor at that chef school once. I was teaching a career preparation class, and it was a lot of international students, but Canadians too. And I saw, and it was like a class of like 45 students, right?
Mhm.
And it was clusters,
Mhm.
Latinos with Latinos, Canadians with Canadians, Indians with Indians,
Yeah.
Koreans with Koreans, Brazilians with Brazilians. This was this, right? There was zero cultural interaction. So I did a project and I mixed them, right? I took the list and I'm like, okay, because I'm good at recognizing where the last names are. So I'm like, okay, this. So every group had one person from different cultures. They hated it at first.
Mm.
Why? This is college. Why are you doing
Yeah.
this to us? Why cannot we work with our friends? I'm like, hello, you are chef students, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to work in the kitchen in Toronto with your friends? No, you're not. You are going to work with people from 20 different nationalities. This is
Love
what I'm
that.
doing for you today here. I am challenging you here. And at the end of the semester, all of them, they thanked me because I pushed them
I
and I
bet.
challenged them. And the one Canadian student, she said, David, you know what? Whatever happens in my life, what I take from this class is now I have two Korean friends that have become two of my best friends in my life. I learn about their culture. I learn about their food. And now if I want to go to Korea, I know that my two besties are going to be with me. I'm like, perfect. Thank you. I did my job. I love it. Thank you so much. This is anything that I needed to hear from this class, right? And at
Mm.
first they were hated and they were giving me so much shit, man. Excuse me again for my language, right? But it's true what they were doing. They were giving me shit, literally, because I didn't put them with their friends. But it was a rationale behind that to challenge them. To hey guys, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to enable the conformity and the laziness of you just hanging out with the people. If you want to do it in other classes outside my class, by all means, but not in my class, because I know what it is to be new in a country, and I know what that you need specifically, right? And you need to improve your English skills. So I'm challenging you to speak English at least in these 2 hours a week. If you don't want to do it outside, that's your problem.
Yeah.
But here you will. And they got it,
Yeah.
right? So that's another example of challenging people.
No, I love that. I think because that's so true that actual life, the actual struggle starts outside the classroom, not inside. And inside, you have the opportunity to really experiment and see how
Yeah.
far you can push yourself and challenge yourself. So I love that, David.
Yes, man.
Absolutely love this example.
Yes.
So I did go through all your social media platforms, and I was wondering there were like certain, tips and strategies and analogies and quotes that you have shared, and I've just kind of combined few of them, and I feel like that might
Okay.
help the international students and the immigrants or anybody who is new to the country. It can help them. So I'm calling this next segment, taking again words from your quote. I'm calling this segment "Unlearn and Adapt." So I'm gonna talk about a few of those tips and tricks and quotes, and I want to just expand on those, like in a line or two.
Sure.
Okay. So first
By all
is,
means.
also you always talked about in your quotes that a lot of things people talk about. You should do this, you should do that, but people don't really mention enough about what can actually harm you, what you should not do, or how, in your words, you
Uh-huh.
have said that
Yeah.
something that can burn your bridges. So let me start by
Yes.
talking about the first thing, which is striving for perfection. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, striving for perfection. Perfection is a myth. Perfection doesn't exist. And if you are
Yeah.
a student who is young and you're starting your journey, you cannot focus on perfection because you're going to get very frustrated. So, for example, let's talk about resume, right?
Yeah.
Resume. Oh my God, my resume, but it's not perfect. And I tell people the perfect resume doesn't exist. Why? Because I give you feedback, right? I help you put a resume together, but I swear to you that you show your resume to a recruiter and they will tell you, nice, but change this and change that.
Yeah.
You change that and then you send it to a manager and the manager will tell you, add this, change this. You will show it to your mom and your mom will give you feedback. So that does not exist. You have to produce a document that you see it and you know that you are telling the stories that are helping you help the reader of your document understand how you convey value or how you add value and how they will benefit from your work in their company,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So perfection does not exist. So if you are striving for perfection, you are wasting quality time.
Yeah.
You need to try. You need to try, and if you fail, it's fine. You just need to get back up and learn from the mistake so that you don't make it again. But
Yeah.
perfection, please do not strive for that.
And speaking of resume, the second is actually not lying on your resume.
Yes, yes. It's huge,
Yeah.
right? So the other day we were speaking with a client, and our client is a bit concerned because she's very young. She has education, but she doesn't have a lot of experience. So she's like, "Oh, I talked to someone. They said that I can write this." We're like, "No, you can't. Is it true or not?"
Mm,
No. Well, then you cannot write that on your resume. You can't lie. Why? Because it's 2023. It's so easy
to
to
verify it.
discover that
Yeah.
it's so easy to verify it, man. And if you lie and they verify it, you're gone.
Okay. So the next is not letting your confidence drop after the first no that you receive.
Hmm. Correct. So this is huge because because again we are emotional people and we have expectations, and maybe you go to an interview and you felt that you did fantastic and then you get the rejection email, right?
Mhm.
And it crushes you and it's normal and you should feel sad and embrace whatever emotion you experience, right? But you cannot let that emotion define you or the rejection define you,
Mhm.
right? You never know that no you can turn into a yes tomorrow,
Mhm.
right? So, and your confidence, you cannot let your confidence drop because in the job search everything is about confidence. Everything. It's not the person with the highest qualifications, it's the person who shows more confidence and promotes themselves better, right?
Yeah.
Think about what happened, ask for feedback.
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, they don't give it to you, and then you reflect what happened, what can I do better next time, what can I do to talk to people in this role, in this company, in other companies, who give me insights into what are the skills that I need to hone in to be more competitive, and you
Yeah.
work on that, and
Mhm.
you understand that door that closed It's not because you're a bad candidate. If you made it to that stage, it's because you're good. But there was another person who just checked off the boxes.
Yeah.
But you can check off the boxes if you do the work. So the no you can turn it into a yes after, but you can't let rejection define you. You cannot lose your confidence, because in the job search, everything works around confidence. Everything.
Yeah. So next is to the point where you actually get the interview. So you said in your post that not to start with sorry my English is not good. Like never to use that.
Right. I love this, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think, okay? You have to think when you are networking, or when you are in an interview, or when you're just having a casual conversation with someone. Why? Or you have to do a presentation, right? Why always the first words that come out of the person's mouth is, sorry, my English is not good. Why are you apologizing for your English? It's a terrible thing that you're doing to yourself and to your audience as well, because you're putting your audience in defensive mode. So
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, so then the person or the audience is going to think, oh, so their English is not good, and they're going to look for things about your English,
Yeah.
and the power of your messages decreases because you told them,
Yeah.
right? And you are doing a disservice to yourself. Instead of that, tell yourself, my English is improving. Today it was better than it was yesterday, and tomorrow it will be better than it is today. It changes the entire dynamics entirely, right?
Yep.
When you talk to someone, you're not talking to a grammar teacher. You're talking to an employer, or to a person who works in a company you want to work for. When you talk, they're not gonna go like, oh my god, they didn't use the present perfect properly. They don't care, as long as they understand the message,
Yeah.
man. Right? Again, it's mental blocks that we put in our minds because we love to self-sabotage. So no, man, do not apologize for your language. Improve it. Improve it. Again, if you feel that is not up to par, improve it. But stop using those are the first words that come out of your mouth. Another thing, I'm new to the country. Is really that the first words that you want an employer to know about you? Really? Instead of
Yeah.
saying, I am a mechanical engineer with 5 years of experience creating solutions that have helped the companies that work at increase profit in $2 million. What's
Mhm.
more powerful, that or I am new to the country, I arrived 3 months ago? Oh, so you don't have Canadian experience? And then your entire game changes because you don't know how to answer that stuff.
Yeah.
And then your confidence drops. You're right, start with a bang. Start with a bang. Start with something that you can use to intrigue the listener. You
Mhm.
have that power because you come from India, Colombia, Brazil, China, Vietnam, chaotic economies, and you thrive
Mhm.
there. How wouldn't you thrive in an economy like this one, where everything is works like a clock,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's huge, man. It's
Yeah,
huge.
that is the opportunity to talk about your hero skills, talks about the experience that you already have, rather than dwelling on the thought that you are new to
Correct.
the country, you don't know the
Yes.
language, let's just completely skip that part.
Play with what you have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And lastly, I want to ask you is, disrespecting local customs and culture. That's a big no-no as well.
hmm Yes. Cultural awareness, right, is very important, right? It's not only about the language, right? It's about culture too, right? So then again, that's why it's important that you do your homework, right? What do Canadians like, right?
Mhm.
So for example, you're a sports person, right? You say for example you're from India, right? And you love cricket, right? But there's no hockey in there. But you're like, oh my
Mhm.
god, like people seem to love hockey there. And then when you're here, oh my god, but how do I make Canadian friends? By asking them stuff. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing: Canada is a welcoming nation, but Canada is not a hand-holding society. So don't expect the Canadian students to go and run to you, and because they're so used to seeing foreigners all their lives, right?
Mhm.
You have to reach out to them, right? So hey, what's your name? Mike. Mike, nice to meet you. So you know what, man? I've been following hockey. It's not something we play in our country. What team do you root for?
Hmm.
Toronto Maple Leafs. Really? Who's your favorite player? And start a conversation there.
Mhm.
You know hockey, man? Sorry, you know cricket, man? No. Oh, and then you start a conversation.
Yeah.
Find ways that are common to people. Another way could be food. Food is in my opinion, food is the friendliest way to connect with
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah.
And again, because there's so many culture here, where are you from? For example, if it was you, right, I would go with the food thing because for me it's easy and it's a topic that I'm passionate about, and because I love food and I love cultural food, right?
Yeah.
So I would gracias, right? Gracias. Where are you from? India.
Mm.
Really? Whereabouts? Punjab. What's the local dish in your city, man? And you tell me, oh my god, that sounds delicious. Tell me,
Mm.
and then you know, in Colombia we will have to, and then I start a conversation like that, and we
Yeah.
break the ice, and we're not talking about difficult topics. We're just getting to know each other through other topics, right? That's cultural awareness,
Mhm.
right? Also, cultural awareness is understanding that professional communications in this country work differently than in a country of origins. And I see this in a lot of Indian folks, right? Sometimes I get messages, gracias. Hey, this is my resume. I'm looking for these jobs. Gave it to your network. And I'm like, who the hell are you? I don't I have no idea who you are. And
Yeah.
you didn't even mention my name and you don't say please. And I get it now because I know that you guys in India are very assertive and that
Yeah.
works there, but it doesn't work here. Here you have to butter up people.
Mm.
And even today I got a message, right? They connected me. How can I assist you? This I'm looking for. Up to it's first thing she asked me. Do you have any leads or jobs there in HR? I'm like, yeah, I know a lot of people. Can you connect me with them? I'm like, how about you send me your resume first and book an appointment to talk to me on my calendar? Here's the link.
Yeah.
Because I cannot connect you with my people if I don't know who you are. I'm sorry, I can't do that
Yeah.
now. But you see, so these are messages that they're sending to employers and people, and that's why they are getting ghosted because it's a lot of pressure, man.
Yeah.
How someone is going to refer you if they have no idea about who you are? Is their reputation, right? So that's cultural awareness too. So you see, it's not about only being fluent in the language. You need to be culturally fluent as well, and it's a massive topic.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm very passionate about all these things, as you can see.
Okay, so David, let's just talk about Orbit 5, which was created to give a positive spin to the way career development is
Yeah.
presented to students. Talk a little bit about that, the initiation of it, and also like to know why it's called Orbit 5. Tell us all about that.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Orbit 5 was born out of my desire to support the international community, international student community, and the newcomer community in a deeper way, right?
Hmm.
So when I came here and I told you that I got these survival jobs, then kind of the first industry role that I got was at a private college doing international student recruitment. When I started in that job, I loved it. I got to work a lot with students, and I got to give them perspective, and I got to do some career coaching on a basic level. And I loved
Hmm.
that. So then I did another program that was more career practitioner development oriented. And I started working at George Brown. And then I worked at the Career Center, and I worked at the chef school. And then I started my faculty role. So I thought, you know what, I want to do something else with this. So in 2016, I opened to Orbit 5 with a business partner. We parted ways a year after, so I stayed with
Hmm.
the business. Orbit 5 is called like that because an orbit is a path that goes around an object.
Yeah.
So it's your path and you are in the middle. So it's how you build that path for yourself.
Mm.
And 5, because 5 is a number that is related with freedom, with ambition, with creativity, right? So we like that.
Interesting.
And then we did so in the pandemic. So this was a passion project, a side project, right?
Hmm.
Did workshops, I did one-on-one consultations, but when the pandemic hit, I found that international students were having a really tough time because they were by themselves, their families were back home, their offers were getting rescinded, their mental health was in detriment. So I thought, you know what, this is the opportunity that I have to actually make an impact in the community. So I decided to host weekly webinars every Monday where we brought a guest speaker to talk about a topic about career development.
Hmm.
So it was great because we gave the students the opportunity to get together on Mondays to come together as a community and navigate together the life and work challenges that life have that the situation presented at the time.
Hmm.
So we were able to build a global community of support. We had international students based in Canada, in the United States, in Australia, in England, in New Zealand, and
Hmm.
we had students from Colombia, Brazil, and Australia who were international students in Canada, but they were taking their programs in those countries, right?
Interesting.
And 95% of those people that were part of the community, they found jobs. And then, so we decided to take that to the next level. And that's when I partnered up with Urvish Patel, whom I believe you're going to also be talking with in
Yeah.
this podcast, right? Urvish was an international student himself. He started as an intern with me, helping me with my website, but he got so invested in the business and he loved it so much. And I mentored him and he got incredible career opportunities that we saw an opportunity to do something more with it. And because Ulrich is a technology person, so now we are transitioning from being a career coaching initiative into becoming an IT educational solution. So we're bringing technology in the conversation as well, and we're building products of technology that will help our students and clients to tell better stories and also help expedite their job search and also help schools and employers to have a better connectivity between the talent and what they're looking for.
It is such an excellent initiative, David, and I have definitely seen few testimonials on the website and the webinars that you guys host every Tuesday, I believe, and the other services that Orbit 5 provides. I highly, highly recommend any of the listeners who need help with your resume, all things finding job. Please reach out to David and his team. So, David, where we can people can connect with you.
Yeah, so every Tuesday we host a webinar, a live webinar at 7. So right now what we're doing, we're hosting 2 webinars a month, and then we're hosting one international alumni panel,
Mhm.
or where we gather 4 or 5 international students that are thriving, former international students thriving in their career, so that they talk about their journey and they give their best piece of advice to international students who are transitioning to the world of college, to the world of work. And once a month, we're also hosting a recruiter panel where we bring 4 or 5 recruiters to talk about all things career, all
Mhm.
things job search, all things about recruitment, so that our audience understands that the recruiter doesn't work for them. The recruiter works for the company that they are working for, or for or for the client that hired them.
Yeah.
We want the students to understand what are the pet peeves of recruiters, what is the first or the best way to attract their attention and stuff. So this is events that we're doing on a weekly basis. You can go to orbit5.ca to have more information. You can see the webinars page and you can see all our events lined up there.
All the necessary links can be found in the show notes as well. So now, David, we're in the final segment of the podcast. I call it Beneath the Accent because we are knowing each other beneath the accent. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. You can answer them in one word or a sentence or however you feel like. The idea is just to know
Okay.
more about you. So, ready?
Yeah.
So, first is what's this one habit that you've adopted that has changed your life?
So the one habit that I have adopted since September 2020 was to not look at my phone first thing as soon as I get up, as I wake up.
Hmm.
What I do, I get my iPad and I go to Duolingo and I do half an hour of a language. In this case, it's German that I
Mm-hmm.
do, and that's the first thing that I do, a habit. Then I do a workout, and then I come see my phone. Right? Why do I do this? Because I want to start the day focusing on myself
Okay.
and something that's going to help me throughout the day. If I open my eyes and I go to my Instagram and I go to my email, and it's not my life anymore,
Yeah.
right? So that's a habit that has helped me a lot.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to David, who is in the initial months of landing in Canada?
Be more strategic, have more conversations, talk to people in different industries, find out what they do, and discard the paths that you don't find interesting and capitalize on building the network in the paths that you are interested in.
So, is there something you recently bought and you now regret?
That's a tough question. I don't, man. To be honest, I think I've been very. I think I've become more intentional with my purchase habits as well.
Okay.
So I read somewhere that is say like, if you go to Amazon, right, and then you see something, do not buy it right away. Leave the page open for 2 or 3 days, and
Yeah,
then in 3 days come back, and you will know if you need it or not.
absolutely.
So it's a really tough question because I'm trying to think. I'm going to tell you, sure, yes, but it sounds trivial. But last week I went to get groceries and I saw these mushrooms. They were 50% off, and I didn't see the price. I'm like, okay, it might be like, I don't know, $3 or something, right?
Yeah.
And then when I saw the bill with the 50% off, they were like $12 each. So it was like, original price was $24, and they were nothing like I expected. So
Okay.
maybe that, yes,
Okay.
yes.
If you had to describe yourself as an animal or any creature, what would it be and why?
A duck.
Why?
A duck is my spirit animal, because a duck is an animal who thrives in all environments, in the air, in water, and in land. And also because they thrive in a group setting, but they also like their me time. They hang out by themselves as well. You can see a duck with their friends, but also you see a duck maybe taking a break and doing a walk on their own.
Yep.
And honestly, because the duck does whatever the hell they want. It's cold. Let's go somewhere else. We don't have to ask anyone, and they just leave for the south to have to enjoy better weather. So duck is the animal that I relate myself with too.
So what's next on your bucket list, David?
Next on my bucket list is go to India. It's the highest ranked country on my bucket list. Yes, I'm dying to go. So that's next on my bucket list.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
So who's your go-to person?
My go-to person depends. But I'm going to say for now, because we are so invested on our business, my go-to person is Urvish Patel, because he's my business partner, and we have to consult a lot with each other on a daily basis. So when I have a question or when I have this idea that this is the person that I go to. Okay.
If you could eat one dish or food or anything for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Wow, man. Oof, that's tough too. One dish for the rest of my life. Probably fried rice.
Okay.
I love rice. I love all kinds of rice.
What about those green rice? It's called arroz verde. What about that?
Arroz verde. Arroz verde is one of my star recipes, actually. I posted a recipe of arroz verde, which is like a recipe with rice, a family recipe with rice, spinach, and bacon. I posted on my TikTok channel, and it got 7.5 million views. It was crazy.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So a rice dish definitely would be something that I could eat every day. Okay. I love rice.
So describe Canada in one word or a sentence.
Diversity.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you, now to mention a sentence, diversity is our strength.
100%. Yes. Love that. Okay. Finally, if you could leave me with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Have fun in the work that you do. Enjoy the work that you do. If you don't enjoy your work, your life is miserable. And if you work at a job that you hate and makes you miserable, it will kill you. So have fun at work. Whatever it is, have fun. Okay, so on that note, David, thank you so much for being on the podcast and adding value to my listeners. Thank you. Thanks, my friend. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you. Hey, listener. Thank you for making it to the end. I highly, highly appreciate you listening to the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't as yet. And please share with your friends or anybody you think would like it. And like I always say, we encourage you to follow your heart, but also us on Instagram. The handle is mythicaccent. You can also leave us a review or write to us at hello@mythicaccent.com. So stay tuned and let's continue knowing each other beneath the accent.